So with my LCS being shut down here in Kansas for another like 3 weeks, in the same vein as everybody else's, I just discovered today that while we can't physically come in the store, if we send him an email or a Facebook message, then he can pull trades or dig through his stock to see if there's some stuff that we have or that he has that we would be interested in, which is something I'm definitely going to take up because I would much rather support my local shop and a local business in general over someone on eBay. And that's no disrespect to people who are selling their stuff on eBay as well. I'm guessing you need some money too, but folks in all of our local shops are getting hit pretty hard by learning that they're a non-essential business, although I still think that definition is bullshit, that these folks are definitely essential to us, even if we're a niche audience. So I found, as I was just looking around on eBay for some random stuff, a lot of, and it's listed as 10 different all graphic novel, trade, paperback, prestige comic, Batman, Superman, X-Men plus, and it was only like $11 for 10 books. So I was like, okay, it's worth the gamble. If there's some things that are easily identifiable to me or to those of you who are way smarter than I am, and let's see if there's anything that's worth talking about. You gotta love a random plastic bag that is packaged into a cardboard box. And if it sounds crappy because it's right next to the microphone, I'm sorry. I'm trying to minimize it now. All right. Here we go. The first title in the book is definitely just a single issue because in other random lots that I got before I started buying from my local shop consistently, this is, I don't even see the publisher, Fleetway Quality, but it's a book called New Statesman. I think in the other random lot that I picked up somewhere online, I've seen this for, I think I have the second or third book of the 5 in the collection, and maybe it's an English book, as the currency listed is both dollars and the British pound and not a euro. But okay. The Draft. Let's see. I can definitely tell this is probably from the 80s. Just by the way it looks. Let's see. It's published by Marvel. Yeah, published in 1988. 88. The writers on this are Mark Grunwald and Fabian Nicieza, and the penciler is Herb Trimpe. On the inside, lovely long textual passage about the draft and being put in the selective service. And then just some good old fashioned newsprinty art. And then the people in the back literally are folks that I've never heard of. Maybe Night Mask, but Sergeant Haldeman, Mastodon, not the dope metal band. Blur, Blowout, and Metallurgist. I don't. Like I said, Night Mask looks familiar, but it's also because he's a random dude with white eyes and relatively nondescript. But X-Men the movie, the official comic book adaptation, because that seems wholly necessary to adapt something that came from comics. But I guess if people want to piss and moan that the original X-Men film isn't based in the tradition of the decades of X-Men that come before it, cool. This says it was written by Ralph Macchio, like is the Karate Kid? Like, did the Karate Kid adapt a comic book from the screenplay? Because if so, that's kind of cool. I know that the convention that was going to be held up in Kansas City, all of the cats from Cobra Kai were going to be there, so that could be something interesting to take. Let's see, a DC book, so I know this might be right up Lost in Comics' wheelhouse. It's number 2 of a what looks like the new version of the Black Label stuff. So definitely something that's that prestige oriented. And it's just number 2, Milestones Forever. I have no idea what this is. So we have 2 books that I can read on their own. 2 books that start in the middle of a series. So all right. We have some Hawkman, and I know that there's a lovely, lovely, lovely cult following of Hawkman that I've run around on Twitter. That it's just something that I've not gotten into. So this is Hawkworld Book 2 Freefall by Timothy Truman with Alcatena and Sam Parsons on the art. Okay, looks dystopian. Hawkman, cool. Another DC number 2, Ken Stacy Tempest Fugitive. I'm going to guess that this plays with some kind of time travel, given both the name and the images on the cover. I can't tell by looking at the back matter or the back cover is if the fat woman is just gardening next to the plane and is shocked that the time traveler kind of flies next to him, or if it looks like she's about to whoop his ass with the garden hoe that's there at the bottom. Okay, another DC, another 2 of 3 Justice League, another nail. So mini series Justice League. By the shorter ISBN number, I'm going to guess that this is something that came out in the early 90s, before the digit changed. And don't ask me how I know that. There's a lot of DC in here. So some of you who another DC title, The Ring of the Nibelung. This is book 4, The Twilight of the Gods. I recognize Beyond Me. Guy Gardner Reborn. So for those of you who like your very specific flavor of Green Lantern, this one is for you. And I'll say that going through these really quickly, these are all in really decent quality, which, if I'm looking to only pay $11 for 10 larger format older books, I'm not going to complain about that. But there you go. I don't know what Alien Legion Tenants of Hell is. Oh, dope. For the used to want to be English teacher in me before I decided to teach history. We have Classics Illustrated, and this is O. Henry's The Gift of the Magi. So if you want a lovely, depressing story to read in an illustrated form, then cool. And you can look for other good classics that would have helped me survive my high school literature classes in, let's see, Tom Sawyer, Treasure Island, The Devil's Dictionary, and other works. Ooh, there's a Faust one. That would be dope with some sweet demonic art. And The Invisible Man. So, cool. This one will at least be a fun read for me because I'm familiar with The Gift of the Magi, both from the literary perspective and the interpretations or adaptations of that story to the theater world. Marvel Comics Shadow Masters, book 4 of 4. Oh, so it's a conclusion to a character that we met in The Punisher. It goes down between Shadow Masters in Japan. Lost in Comics, I don't disagree with you that there's nothing wrong with a lot of DC. But here's a place where, like I said, you're more of an expert in that area. and I'm more of a Marvel guy. So I know that if I start trying to find some of the connecting threads to these, I'm gonna blow up your DMs to ask you a bunch of questions. All right, GI Joe's Battle Files from Image Comics, and I'm really liking the new IDW run that is going with GI Joe and kind of the new origins of the team in the post like President Cobra Commander world. That I think it's a really interesting read, and GI Joe has become one of those kind of nostalgic titles that, as we kind of sit in our Corona, quarantine, stay at home prisons, GI Joe definitely feels like one of those stories that I would want to jump back into. Some more DC. You got a Black Hawk by Howard and Chaykin, and then a bunch of shit written in Russian at the bottom. This is a character that I have zero frame of reference for, but it's definitely a either World War II era piece or maybe some kind of like what Man in High Castle alternate history, because there's a lot of Nazi references in here, especially on the last panel where you get a swastika to set up the Iron Dreams and Bloody Murder on the back one. So not a book I'm familiar with. Gregory Fatboy from Piranha Press. Okay. From the Straight Jacket to the Straight Life. What happens when Gregory, the world's shortest and best loved lunatic, is adopted by a family of questionable values? Why does Big Brother Rusty really hate Gregory? And what does Upham mean anyway? It's got a Neil Gaiman backflap quote, which means it has to have some kind of legitimacy to it, where he says Gregory is the Peanuts for the 1990s. This might be working its way to the top of something random that I will read, especially when it looks from the front and the back that it looks like the art you see in a contemporary children's book, but in the top corner where the pricing is, it says it's suggested for mature readers. Oh, yeah. All right, here's one that I actually know something about and I'm excited about. Punisher. As you know, I was watching Lost in Comics 250th sub video where they were talking about storylines or characters that meant things to them. The Punisher is one of those nostalgic comics for me that I mentioned in the very first video that I did. That the Punisher is one of the first titles that I not only purchased but read kind of exclusively, and I have a bunch of ratty, tattered, and torn books down in the bottom. So I'm very excited to read this one. And again, it's not me dogging on all of the DC that I've gotten before. Here's another one that I know who the two characters are. It's a Marvel book. It's Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown #1 with Walter and Louise Simonson and John Muth and Kent Williams doing the writing. The irony is that I am playing the quest or the Challenge of Champions, whatever the Marvel tappy Injustice, Marvel's version of Injustice is, and Havoc and Wolverine are currently on my first team. But I will say that at least the cover art from this is something that pulls me in and makes me want to read, but it's not a straight up Marvel title that it's attributed to Epic Comics. So I'm wondering if this is some of the Marvel action stuff that IDW gets to write and publish some Marvel comics that I don't understand right now. In the Ring series, I think this is an exact double up on the Black Hawk Nazi book. So first time I've seen two in here. Ooh. So this is a good come out now, I think. Lost in Comics was excited about Strange Adventures when it came out. when it came out on the podcast that I'm on from my local shop. I know Jason, the owner, did not like it. And I said that I would be one of the first books I read and we would talk about it on the back end. And I actually liked the first Strange Adventures. And maybe it's because I haven't written or read any of the, is it Mr. Miracle? That book is supposed to feel very similar to. So here is Richard Bruning and Andy Kuber something. There's a old price sticker on top of it, but it's a book one in a collection of Adam Strange. So I think this will be cool, especially if I'm liking what is happening in the Strange Adventure title, and I want to see more about that character, which I had 0 degree of familiarity with from Jump. That this could maybe hook me in terms of some back knowledge. My first, I think, a number one in a series and my first Neil Gaiman title, not only in this bag but in my collection. It's Black Orchid book number one. Flipping through it, the art is really good. I mean, the only Gaiman comic graphic novel work that I'm familiar with clearly is Sandman, because I'm a bit of a homer, and B, most of my knowledge is the shallow Google search. But this looks like those books in terms of art and things like that. And I know that if I like the way Gaiman writes, then I'll eventually start consuming everything. Oh, this is fucking hilarious to me. So, one of my favorite trashy bad film addictions is watching Alien versus Predator. It's not something that I get to watch all that often because my wife doesn't like big loud scream monster movies, and I have to be careful of the kind of shit that I watch at night because if a child walks in the room, then they might be scarred for life by seeing it. I just posted a review not too long ago of Archie versus Predator, the second series of that, and one of my assistant coaches who he was laughing when I told him I was reading the Archie versus Predator book. It's because he was a big fan of Batman versus Predator. So here's the conclusion, first two books for, because it's pretty funny to me. Here's the second one, or the second book that I have familiarity with because it's something that I know that I read as a kid, but the Superman Doomsday Run. Here's the second kind of prestige, kind of a little bit thicker format to it, and we're the stack. So we'll see if there's anything else in there. For a minute there, I thought that said the Nazi. The Naz, a DC book 1 of 4, Tom Veitch, Brian Talbert, and Steve Whitaker. The art in here looks very 80s. They're already doing karate 3 or 4 pages in, which is very 80s. I don't know what this is, but it looks like they discover, some kind of ruins and venture through it. Oh, there's some weird tantric sex happening. Okay, I'm intrigued by that one. Nick Fury versus S.H.I.E.L.D. Again, something that I'm surface level familiar with here. This is book 4 of 6. So hunting these down will be maybe a little bit of a challenge up. I have 4 of 6 and 6 of 6 back to back in the stack. This cover is dope on book number 6. That's kind of cool. Total Eclipse book 1. That looks like Buck Rogers. It's from Eclipse Books. It's from Eclipse Books' 10th anniversary. This is a publisher that I've never heard of, and I do not know if they still exist. Try and see if I can see a date. Oh, there we go. May of 88, so we're definitely in a late 80s, early 90s time frame. Ooh, all right. And I'm glad that I opened the bag the way that I did, because I can end on four books that I'm kind of excited about. Here's another Punisher title, so I've got 2 Punisher books in here that I'm quite excited about. So you have Punisher, Captain America, Blood and Glory. This is book 1 of 3. Here, broader opposites of the two of them, right? In terms of the never kill in the name of justice versus, I'm gonna fucking kill everybody. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but here's how much I love me some Punisher. When I took my son last year to a local con held over at the county fairgrounds, and he wanted, a $7 million transformer. I was like, my guy, you are 3. You will destroy that shit, and your mother will kill me. We found a good old fashioned late 80s, early 90s bendable Cyclops, Wolverine, and I found me a good old Frank Castle. So Frank can. And then the bottom of the stack is 2 Excalibur from there's a sequence on these that I'll crack them open and see if there's a book 1, book 2, but these are Chris Claremont, Arthur Adams, and Terry Austin on the second one, and Chris Claremont and Alan Davis on the first one. So these are books, again, I'm excited by a lot of X-Men oriented things. As you may have seen if you've looked at any of the stuff that I've written in terms of reviews of all of the Dawn of X, and then the last book is a double up of Excalibur, Mojo Mayhem. So I think this is about what I expected out of an auction like this, right? 10 sight unseen randomly listed books. It was true to the listing in terms of it was heavily Marvel and DC. They used the tactic of putting some of the big names in there of X-Men and Batman in the listing to give you some of those things. I'm also, surprised that I had some doubles when, these weren't like one bag. So clearly someone picked all of these up, stuck them in a bag, and stuck them in a box. But for $30 with a 7-inch high stack of things to read, especially from an era where if I want to try and hunt some of these down at comic book shops, I'm going to be paying a little bit more just based on some of the age for them. I won't complain too much. For any of the random books in here that I knew nothing about, like the Naz or the Black what, the one that looks like there's some random Nazis involved. If you see anything in there that you want, like I tweeted about the other day, where I was in my giving mood of just randomly giving some folks some digital codes, when I need to work my way out of the house, if there are any books in here that really got someone excited, and then my reaction to it was, I don't know what the fuck this is, or I wasn't too excited by looking at a title, shoot me an email, comicbookposer@gmail.com, or comment here, or send me a DM on Twitter at CBPoser. And if there's something in here that you really want, unless it was one of like the 6 books that I'm really excited about, I have no problem getting rid of them, especially in the spirit of sending some things on for new to you comic book day on Wednesdays until we get out of the current world we're in, where we have a dearth of new stuff that we can't find or can't read. So that's that. Thanks for Lost in Comics for kind of checking in and looking at me mumble from time to time and repping some DC in the comments. Like I said, if you are one of the folks that I interact with and you are more of a DC fan and you want to help educate me on some of these folks and why I should read some of them, or you have a lead on some of the series that I've got the book 2 or 3 of that where I could find a 1 or 2 for relatively cheap and help support your local comic book shop. If mine here in Lawrence doesn't have it, again, Chops Comics. And if you live in Lawrence and you stumble onto this when the non-essential business ban is lifted, I expect all of you to form a massive line, either splitting around the Jade Garden or Jade Bar / the Jazzercise, and help throw all of the money in your pockets at Jason and his skeleton crew, because they're fantastic. That I could not have picked a better random store on a random day to walk into and have someone who has been able to read figure out what I like to read relatively quickly and kind of hook me up and get me addicted to the crack that is, now buying random lots on eBay and praying that I find cool things. So yeah, if there's anything in here that you think you want, like I said, shoot me a message and I will offload it in your direction. Thank you for checking me out. I am signing off from here in my closet, and hopefully I will talk to some of you all later. Have a good one.